Patients with metastatic urothelial bladder cancer have a really poor outcome. Their overall survival in unselected patients is only about 12 months. There are subsets of patients who do worse, those patients who fail chemotherapy and those patients who are not eligible for cisplatin-based chemotherapy, and their survival can be as short as 7 or 8 months. The introduction of immune checkpoint inhibitors has made a big difference to that, and it's the first new group of drugs to be developed for a generation, for 40 years. Atezolizumab was the first drug to be approved, and subsequent drugs like pembrolizumab and nivolumab are being or have been approved also. The real difference with these immune checkpoint inhibitors is 3 key factors. Number 1 is they're resulting in long-term durable remissions for patients. We've not seen that previously. Number 2 is it looks like the biomarker, the PD-L1 biomarker, can enrich for response. We've not had biomarkers before in bladder cancer. And the third thing is the drugs are super well tolerated compared to chemotherapy. And my nurses and my patients tell me that, and the randomized data and the quality of life data will support that. We're currently in a position where we have randomized phase 3 data showing we can beat chemotherapy in unselected patients with pembrolizumab. We're showing similar, indirect results, but similar results in that setting with the other drugs, with atezolizumab, with durvalumab, and nivolumab, for example. We're also showing in those patients who are not eligible for cisplatin-based therapy, we're showing activity with atezolizumab and activity with pembrolizumab. So in those areas of unmet need, we're showing significant activity. And this is a massive change in bladder cancer, the first new group of drugs for a generation. There are key questions that we need to address next. And I think looking at it, for me, there are 2 or 3 that I think are super important. The first one is whether or not the frontline randomized phase 3 studies, of which there are 3 or 4 key studies, one of which is Danube, which will read out next year. And that trial looks at durvalumab versus immune combinations with durvalumab and tremelimumab versus chemotherapy, not in the unmet need patients, but in all comers frontline. And it's possible, I think probable, that there will be subsets of patients that will do better with immune therapy than chemotherapy. And if that's the case, and I clearly hope it's everyone, but if that's the case, we'll see a dramatic change in the way we currently treat bladder cancer. One of the issues is whether or not the biomarker is going to turn out to be important. In the second-line setting, chemotherapy doesn't work particularly well, but in the front-line setting, we know chemotherapy performs better. And it's possible that these trials, of which there are 3 or 4, will read out in the biomarker-positive population, but not necessarily in all comers. And so therefore, looking into the future, it's conceivable that immune therapy won't necessarily replace chemotherapy, but immune therapy will be used along with chemotherapy. And so the final piece of that jigsaw is that there are other trials not looking necessarily at immune combinations, but looking at immune and chemotherapy combinations. And there's a key question for patients, and that's going to be is when one's diagnosed with metastatic bladder cancer, can these drugs extend your life? And the answer to that is yes, currently, in certain settings, but will that move to everyone in the frontline setting, or will the biomarker be important? Do we need to use immune combinations, and do we need to use immune chemo combinations? Huge piece of work going on over the next 2 or 3 years in bladder cancer.